Well, welcome everybody. Glad we're here. Another episode of the RTI Speed Tips with Bob and Chad. Not chips. That's what I had for supper.
We make
Anyway,
chips.
episode number 44. Things we're going to talk about, of course, is we're here to answer any of you guys' questions that you might have for anything. Um, the last time we were on the air was for the Harris Clash. I'll tell you what, that race went off good. I mean, Deer Creek did another great job. The racers did a great job. Chad and all of the marketing partners were awesome this year, and I just can't thank everybody enough, especially the racers. I mean, those guys put in a lot of work to come there. I think there's some things that we're going to change up a little bit we already got quite a few notes and things that just want to do some stuff a little bit different next year. And so we're looking forward to that already. In fact, I was actually in my Harris Clash folder today writing some notes of things that I had thought about when I was driving down the road. And so what's new and exciting at Where's Machine?
Well, we're just plugging away here, starting to get ready for the big month of September, Super Nationals and the Jamboree and the big specials for the end of the year stuff, and starting to work on some new products. Should have a few new things there in Boone. We haven't really had a lot of time to work on new stuff. We've been so busy this year, but the boys are actually finalizing some designs, and we'll have quite a few actually, probably, I don't know, 4, 5, 6 maybe, depending on how much machine time we got available, but we should have some new stuff at Boone. So we're always excited. We used to wait till PRI, and there's so many people that come to Boone that don't go to any trade shows. So it's been my goal to kind of debut the new products at Boone. So many of the West Coast customers and East Coast customers come, and it's such a huge event that is a great opportunity to get in front of all them people. So we're always trying to get our new stuff there first at Boone. So.
Well, and that's a very good point, because a lot of people don't look at that. That's very smart marketing on your part, because of the fact that there's a lot of racers that come to Boone to race, but there's a lot of people that come to Boone just to be part of the festivities. And I mean, that IMCA Super Nationals it's an exciting event. This year it's going to basically be 8 days long, with the 2 nights of the Dream, and how they've got that scheduled. So it's going to be a lot of fun. And those of you who haven't been, it's a must-see event. I mean, people can tell you all about it, and they can give you stories, and they can give you everything under the sun, but until you've actually visually or actually physically went and attended that event, it's hard to comprehend how they run through, I don't know, 100 plus heat races in a night's period of time. I don't know if it's 100, but I know there's at least 50 heat races. It's got to be close to at least 80 heat races, anyway, we'll say. So that's going to be pretty cool. And the thing, people, don't understand some of the preparation that go into it, just like you and us, and the preparation that goes into that event, because, we want to get there and see as many people as we can. And this year we're going to have a new 2022 GRT modified car that's going to be on hand. And I think it definitely, of course, has all kinds of weird parts on it. So we'll be able to be beside Chad again in the booth that we have been in, and hopefully be able to debut some of his products for him too. So I look forward to it. And like I said, plus you can always watch it on IMCA TV, but it's quite the event. There's no doubt about it. Super Nationals, go on vacation, come back on probation. That's a good one, Jeremy. I appreciate that. First question we have tonight, UMP modified 4-link. Will dropping the right rear upper bar tighten the car up? Won't apply the right rear as hard. It will tighten the car up once you're ready to up off the corner. The problem that we run into a lot of times is if you drop it, it can make the car lazy on corner entry and a little bit lazy in the middle. So you might, depending on your racetrack, if you're getting in good and going through the middle good, dropping the lower bar will definitely force more traction to the left rear coming up off the corner. You just got to be careful sometimes how you might take some away. We're actually running more angle in our right rear bar now than what we have in quite a bit of time. And that works well at some racetracks that are a little bit higher bank, someplace where there's a little bit of an edge to run against. But on some of the slicker stuff, it would probably get you off the corner better with less bar angle. What's your opinion on that, Chad?
Yeah, I mean, assuming he's talking about the chassis side, so flattening that's gonna, tend to make the car lazy and wheelie, just like you said. So if he was talking about lowering it on the cage side, that'd be a different story. But definitely, it's a really touchy change for sure. I mean, you can go from perfect to dialed out wheelie in with one hole change, basically.
And it's that sensitive anymore. I mean, it's amazing how sensitive it really is. Um, what adjustments would you help coming off the corner in a slick racetrack? Well, it's on a sport mod. Um, a little bit more bar angle in the left rear definitely helps the car come off the corner. On a sport mod with a two-link car, we take angle out of that right side bar. That definitely helps the car come up off the corner. A little bit of lead in the car. Those are some things that would definitely help the car off the corner. Might be a silly question, but do you believe flex can be knocked out of the car with a hard right side impact with the wall? Looking car over, we don't notice anything bent. 2021 Shaw car. Well, I'm not that familiar with how the Shaw car is designed, but these race cars are kind of built a little bit as a spring. It's kind of like the old go-kart stuff. Once it's any type of steel, once it's been flexed enough, and with a hard hit, it can actually flex quite a bit. Wouldn't surprise me at all. I wouldn't. I mean, and I'm not saying because it's a Shaw car. I'm saying any race car that takes a pretty hard hit, it's going to have an effect. And that flex goes through the X in the car, goes through the tail. I mean, you take a pretty major hit on the right front, it can triangulate that car, even though it doesn't look bent. It can flex it to the point where it could respond like it's bent.
Yeah, the biggest thing I think is if you take a hard shot like that.
We lost it, Chad.
Just go out and come back in.
Not seeing you yet. I would log off and log back on. Well, while Chad's away, I'll try to answer this question, Jeremy. What effect would the change on the right side upper bar if you did it on the rear end? Well, if you dropped it a hole in the rear end, you would gain angle. Plus, it would increase the indexing into the spring. So the car is going to want to get into the spring harder. So it would actually make the car feel like you stiffened up the suspension. That's some of the things that it would do, but it would change. There we go. All right.
Having internet problems all day today here, so I'm guessing that's the problem.
Yeah. Question. Jeremy wanted to know the gentleman that talked about lowering the bar on the frame, the right side upper bar on the frame, wants to know what the effect of changing the right side upper bar on the rear end side does.
Well, if you lower it on the rear end side, you're going to put more angle in it. So that would give you more traction, more drive angle, which would help the car rotate on throttle and make it freer off the corner.
Yeah, because it's going to also, index into the spring a little bit faster. It's going to make the suspension feel a little bit stiffer because of the additional angle. So, do you recommend softening a fifth coil on a slick racetrack like you do on a pull bar to maintain the same travel? Well, I'm not your number one guy to go to on fifth coils, but in my opinion, there's a certain amount of movement that has to happen with the pinion. And when you get on some real slick stuff, when you're 32, 36 inches out there, the pull bar works totally different than a lift arm, because the lift arm's trying to lift traction from the front to the back. The pull bar is taking the rear, basically the weight of the rear of the car, and forcing the rear end down. So I don't know if I'd be the right guy to ask on that question, but I would think that you would still want to get some movement. Because what if you soften it up, you have less chance of wheel spin coming off the corner, because that will absorb it. What's your opinion on that, Chad? I'm not that familiar on this.
Yeah, I would say when it's slick, you would want more or less rate, so that you have more decel movement to not shear traction on entry. Yes.
Yeah, that would be my response. We're moving the left rear trailing arm back a hole on the chassis on an IMCA Sport Mart to help with traction off the corner. Well, Troy, it depends on where you're at already. I don't know if I would go behind center of the axle tube. We run ours, ours would be basically about 7 degrees ahead of center. I've not tried anything longer than that, moving it back any further. Do you have any customers or anybody that's doing any of that type of stuff, Chad?
I don't know if he's talking about just shortening the bar. That's not going to give you better traction. It says side. Is that what he's talking about, or?
Well, he's moving the trailer arm back a hole on the chassis. Oh yeah, duh. I was thinking on the rear end. You're right.
So lengthening the wheelbase or just shortening the bar?
Yeah, what he's talking about, I'm assuming, Troy, what you're talking about is moving the bar back a hole, so you'd be moving the rear end back. That's definitely going to give you more traction off the corner, but that might be too big of an adjustment. The car is probably going to be pretty pushy in the middle and off the corner. IMCA A-Mod, open motor, tight getting into the corner, off the gas. What would be your go-to adjustment and why? Thanks for doing the good work. Well, Dan, before I get to yours, let's go back to Troy's. Yeah, he would be lengthening the wheelbase. That's going to be an inch movement, and usually we only lengthen it probably 3/8 of an inch at the most. So I think if you did that, that would be too major of a change. Tight going into the corner off the gas.
Left front spring?
Yeah, I would say left front spring definitely, because if it's tight off the gas, it means it's stuck on the right rear pretty hard. So I'm not sure what your spring rates would be in the front, but I would be willing to bet if you're tight getting into the corner, more than likely you're stiffer on the left front spring. That's going to help you. That would be a good adjustment. And why I would do that is because when you get into the corner, left front will kind of come down a little bit more and release a little bit of that side bite on that right rear and help the car rotate a little bit better. In fact, we actually ended up, we were racing at Marshalltown last weekend, and the racetrack was super slick. And it kind of dawned on me there that we needed to, for a couple of our cars, we probably need to stiffen the left front spring, because the way the racetrack is shaped, the back straightaway is straight, but it's kind of a little bit of an oval to the point where if you roll down in hard, the car actually starts turning a little earlier than what you expect it to. And so I think that's what our go-to is going to be, possibly next weekend, is going with a little bit stiffer spring. 600-pound left front, yeah. I would consider softening that, try a 550. That will help keep some of the side bite off the right rear. That's one of the things I'd recommend. 4-link UMP modified. What's your thoughts on running more left rear bite than normal? Have tried 20 to 40 pounds, but the car feels super loose. Have around 120 pounds in it. Well, the more left rear bite you're going to get, the car's going to be looser getting in. So the only way to really make that work is with a fairly strong Panhard bar adjustment, stiff left front spring to try to keep side bite in the car. If you can keep side bite in the car and get the car in and through the middle, it's going to traction up more coming up off the corner. And with you guys where you don't run a spoiler, that might be a help, because that's some of the things we used to do in the back in days in the past. But you're going to really have to keep the side bite in that thing, because the more left rear bite you put in it, the more side bite you take out of it.
I got to go back to that one where I was talking when I got lost there. But with that car that took the shot or whatever, when we had an asphalt car. We had an asphalt car once that took a door shot, and it actually shaped the chassis like a banana. So it was bent really bad, and we at the time we couldn't afford to get a new frame, so it was kind of one of our favorite cars. We just re-wheelbased and re-squared everything. You couldn't go off your squaring peg. So I don't know how Shaw does it, but if you take an impact like that, as long as the wheelbase is right and the track is right, left to right, front to back, and the car is square and tracking the way it should, I always said in the middle was kind of dumb iron. What mattered was the pickup points and where everything was wheelbase wise and track wise. But on that deal, I'd call Kevin Shaw. He would be able to tell you for sure. Thoughts?
Yeah, that would be my recommendations too. If you go softer, okay, the left front, do I soften the right front to keep the 50-pound split? Actually, no, I probably wouldn't. I would take the split out of the car. We've got a lot of guys running equal springs in the front. And like I said, then to get the cars to tighten up, we'll actually stiffen that left front spring. But we've found equal front springs are perfectly fine. I would take the split out of it and try it, see what you think. 8th mile egg-shaped racetrack in 1 and 2, pushing and off the corner exit, right front frame, tapping surface, right front shock, spring junk. I wouldn't say for sure, but I actually had a situation where I talked to a customer today. They softened their front end up to get the front end to work a little better, and the front end is definitely working better. The car's definitely liking the softer front springs. The problem is, of course, the right front's getting in the racetrack a little bit more. And so he wanted to raise the ride heights, and I said, no, actually, that's not the correct way to do it. I would have your shock builder up your compression on your shock absorber, because the soft springs allow things to happen, but when you have soft springs and a soft shock, everything happens too quickly. So if we go stiffer with the softer spring, if we go stiffer with that right front shock, what it'll do is it'll let the car drive down into the corner a little bit further before it gets all the way down. And you're not going to notice a performance disadvantage. It's just going to allow the car, and when it does get down and the frame does get down close to the dirt, at least it won't slam into the dirt and upset the whole complete car. So that would be my recommendations. Pushing in, not off. Okay, let's go back to that one. Pushing in. Well, is the push because it's getting on the right front too hard or too quickly? I would be willing to bet that's possibly the case. And with an egg-shaped racetrack, those can be a little bit more challenging because you almost have a double corner, but I would take and recommend entering my corner, backing my corner up a little bit and maybe entering a little bit higher and let the car rotate just a little bit sooner so that the car's in rotation mode before you get to the center of that egg. Spear rods on a right rear modified with spring on back all bolted to the bird cage. Do you think moving the spring table back more away from the left front increases more spring load? Well, it's going to a point. I don't know if the amount that you're moving it. I mean, if you're running with the spring behind the housing, is that what you're understanding there?
Well, he's basically two-linking a four-link car with a spear rod with the spring behind. We did that 5 years ago, I think, with drips, and really, I mean, if you want to two-link the car, just two-link the car. The spear rod's a quick way to go back and forth from two-link to four-link, but I don't know. It's the farther away you move that spring from the center line of the axle, the more rate you're going to need to hold the car up. So it's going to fall. I think it's going to fall and wheelie pretty bad, so it's going to take more rate the farther away you get. So I don't know. We didn't really play with them much. We broke a couple of them spear rods, and we just said, you know what, this is just probably not something we need to mess around with. So
I think when you do that with that spring behind the housing, you're going to create a situation where the car is going to be a little bit tight getting into the corner, but it's going to get real tight in the middle when it does that transition. If it's a situation where, what'd you say?
It's the axle wrap of the pull bar is what messes with the spring so hard,
Right, because it unloads. Well, then when you lift and it loads it back up, it tightens it up, and it's just makes the car pretty inconsistent. I mean, back years and years ago when we were big with the two-link stuff and there wasn't rules on where you could put the two-link, we would run that behind the housing, but really, really close to the housing so that it wasn't such a severe situation. And we just did that to try to increase more left rear traction up off the corner.
Yeah, spear rod spring on top is what I would run.
That would be.
Take the rotation out of it.
Yeah, take the rotation out of it and just rely on the spring itself. Josh, how would you try and stop four-wheel skate? Penn Ohio Pro Mod. Four-wheel skate. And actually, that's a great question because I had that question towards the end of the week last week. What's happening is, of course, the four-wheel skate, the whole car is not rolling enough to the right side. So the car goes in, and then what happens is it goes to roll on the right rear, and it kind of hooks the right rear. Now all of a sudden the front end doesn't roll more, and it allows the car to kind of keep the car straight up, and it lets the car actually slide because the right front's no longer hooking what it's supposed to. I would try a softer right front spring or a softer right front shock. The right rear, it's very possible that the car is probably a little bit snug on corner entry, and the right rear's out sticking the right front is what the problem is, and then the whole car comes into a drift. So, I would try putting some. In fact, what we've actually done is put like a 20-pound chunk of weight up there beside the headers on the right front to try to get the car. The key is the right front's not doing its job. Dustin. Gotcha. Dynamic generator. Yep. A stiffer left rear spring. A stiffer right rear spring. Um, I would go softer on my right front spring. Stiffer right rear, but a softer right front might get the cars, because the biggest problem, like I said, is you're not getting the cars sticking the right rear too hard, and not letting the front end stick more. So I would try softening the front end to get more transfer to the front end of the car. If that makes it worse, then that's definitely where the car's stuck so hard on the right rear, you need to free the car up getting in. Matthew, I've never checked the load on a poundage on a left front. I know Bobby has done that on a couple cars with a couple customers, but I don't, I couldn't actually tell you what the data is on that. I would have to ask him. You could sure give us a call here at the shop, and he'd be more than happy to share whatever information he has with you on that. Um, I apologize. He was doing some of that stuff one day, and I was on another mission at the time and didn't pay any attention. How about you, Chad?
The number is going to be so drastic. I mean, again, you can't say 750 pounds because there's so many variables there, like the chain length and everything. Your best bet is just to figure out where your chain stops, put the stick on, get that number, and start building a database of where you're at and what the changes do to the race car when you lengthen and shorten that chain, or keep the chain the same length but you wind the spring up. So that's the left front corner with the load sticks is kind of relatively a new place that people are playing with. And it's so critical with your data and your notebook, because two of the same car are the same. It's real critical for you to just focus on your car and what your number is and tune accordingly.
Well, and that change is going to be a big factor. I mean, if you've got an inch and a half of drop, or if you've got an inch and 3/4 of drop, the drop is going to be the key factor. So, yeah, what Chad just said, I agree 100%. Okay. Let's go back.
Joel, is that where we're at?
Dustin, with the springs mounted to the birdcage, not to the rear end. This is the guy that had the spring behind the housing with the spear rod.
Yeah, but the cage doesn't move because it's spear.
So it would be the same, even though it's mounted to the cage with the spear rod, the cage wouldn't move. So it's not going to, it's going to act like a welded up cage.
Yeah.
Spring cup location matter on a sport mod rear end left to right. Well, all that matters because, of course, the more inboard you have, like on the right rear, the car is going to roll more, so you're going to have a stiffer spring. As a rule of thumb, I still think from the edge of the rotor to the middle of the spring needs to be in that 11 to 12 inch range. Much more inboard than that. In fact, actually, I'm sorry, it probably needs to be in more of the 8 to 10 inch range from the rotor. 12 inches is from the center of the wheel, is a pretty decent location. When you go outboard, you have to go softer. Well, then when you go softer on the spring, you start to get movement, but it's not loading the tire. If you go inboard, you have to go stiffer, but then it's loading the tire too much. So it's kind of a fine line on where that actually is located on that spring. Did I answer that one correct? Did you?
Beautiful.
Chris, in a sport mod, if 14 degrees of angle is the least amount of angle I can put on my Panhard bar, what with it as far down on the chassis as I can be and as high up on the rear end as I can? Would you run it that way, or being higher on the rear end, or would you lower the bar on the rear end to sacrifice to get having more angle? Well, as a rule of thumb, depending on the track conditions, I still believe in that, and I don't pay as much attention to angle probably as what I should, but from the center of the housing to the center of the bolt on the panhard bar needs to be in that 3 to 3.5 inch range on the rear end itself. That seems to be kind of a magical point we've found works pretty good. You start getting past 4 inches on that, it's going to try to put way too much side bite in the right rear tire. It's going to kind of try to bind the car up a little bit. Then I always try to run my uh, rear end side. I always try to run the rear end side about an inch above this, about the same thing, 3 inches above center of the rear end, um, or 2.5 to 3 inches above center, and that's pretty decent angle. And most generally, that angle comes out to be around 15 degrees. But I don't actually play with it as much on the chassis as I do on the rear end side. Rear end side, anytime you make a 1/2 inch adjustment on the rear end side is a pretty big adjustment, and we kind of have that go-to 3.5 inches on the rear end when it's heavy and 4 inches when it's slick. The stagger in the front make much difference since the wheels are turning independent of each other. Well, even though they are turning independent of each other, the car still believes that they're somewhat hooked together is how it goes. So we always recommend an inch to an inch and a half. More front stagger helps the car turn down into the corner. Even though they are separate, when you turn them, both wheels turn. So the taller tire is going to try to drive around the shorter tire, and it'll do the same thing in the front as it does in the back. The only thing is it affects it more corner entry, where rear stagger is middle of the corner and off. To tighten the car, would you just add left rear pressure to put more crossweight in it, or take air pressure out to hook it harder? Well, it depends on what tire you're running. If you're running an IMCA tire, I wouldn't take air pressure out of it. Those tires are designed to have, they're designed as a DOT type tire, and the sidewalls don't have the flex that what you would think that it would have. So a lot of guys, the actual tire itself will buckle if it's too low on air pressure. So adding air pressure, what we actually used to do back in the day when, say, on a red flag or whatever, you couldn't do anything to the race car except you could let air out of the tires. If the car was a little bit too, so we always started with a little bit more air pressure in the left front, and then as the race went on, if we could, we'd let air out of the left front tire, which would do the same thing in a sense as putting more air in the right or the left rear tire, because you're putting more crossweight in the car. You guys ever load your left front? Well, we just discussed that. I know that's some things that some people are playing with. I myself have not played with it. I know Bobby has, just like I said here a little bit ago. What's the advantage or disadvantage of a 16 or 20-inch spring on a 3-link left rear? Well, the advantage, of course, is well, you must not be running IMCA because the rules state you can only run a 13-inch spring. If I could, I like the 16-inch spring. The advantage of the 16-inch spring is the fact that when the car gets up on the chain, you still have spring touching the weight jack. So there's not that free fall, so to speak, gap between the 13-inch spring and the top of the weight jack. So the advantage would be the spring's going to remain, have the ability to have a little bit of load on it. Long pull versus short pull bar. What's the effect? Open motor, UMP open motor. Well, I'll let you take that one, Chad. Go ahead.
The long pull bar is going to be more traction, more longevity traction. A short pull bar is going to be more instant traction. So I mean, generally you're going to be way more consistent with that 28 to 32 range. And I see there was a few cars that were building them with like a 24, and I mean, it's just so erratic, and it has a ton of instant traction. But man, them cars with the long bars are driving past them going down the straightaway. So I'd say I'm 28 to 32 range is where I like to be.
And the problem with the short bar is you'll get instant traction, but you run out. So it's kind of like a big spurt of traction, and then all of a sudden all the angle's already in it, and there's not enough length to keep the traction in the car down the straightaway. So the short pull bar, I mean, unless you're running an eighth of a mile racetrack where you're just turning all the time or something, that would be about the only time I would say that would have an advantage. But it's just too quick. We went to the, like Chad said, the 28 to 32 bar, and it seemed to be more consistent. I didn't feel we lost any initial traction, but I did like the fact that we kept the traction in the car more.
I mean, you can almost mimic it with angle. So you run less angle in the shorter bar, more angle in the longer bar to compensate for the instant style track.
Yeah, and the other thing about it's the same, anything that pulls and it's quick, when you get off the throttle, it's going to unload quicker. So the longer bar has a tendency to not unload quite as quick. UMP modified. What's your opinion on chaining the right rear? Well, there's traction in chaining the right rear. The problem is, of course, if you get on a rough racetrack, it can be pretty sketchy because that right rear, you get on something that keeps the tire not in contact with the racetrack, it's going to be worse with the chain on there. But a lot of guys now are doing, rather than chaining the right rear down, they're going to a lot stiffer rebound type thing on the shock absorber and doing some other things like that to take some of the violent action out of that chain. 50-lap sport mod feature, mud plugs or no mud plugs? Also, would you recommend running grooved or Sipe tires or just Siped? If I could run a grooved tire, I would run a grooved tire myself. Now, I wouldn't have a ton of grooves in there, but I think the grooved tire, we actually run grooved and Siped together, and I think that works pretty good. On a 50-lap race, boy, I'd be on the fence. If it's fairly dry, slick, I probably wouldn't run a mud plug. First of all, your brakes are going to get hot. Your tire's going to get hot. It's not going to cool down as much. I know guys are either way on that deal. Myself, I probably would go without the plug. Pull bar location in front of or behind the axle center. What's the difference in what way it works? Go for it, Chad.
So, I mean, for the last how many years, it's always been in front, 1 to 4 inches in front of center line. Pull bars used to travel more than they do now, so you had to be front of center line so that it wouldn't fall over as you were getting the axle wrap and kind of essentially over indexing the pull bar. So that's kind of why the range has been in front for a long time. The less we travel pull bars, now we're traveling 1 to 1 1/4 inches. Unless you're on a UMP car, you're probably traveling 2.5. So UMP car is going to have to be in front. But the less you travel that pull bar and you can control that axle wrap, you can move the arm farther back. It's more traction to have the pull bar behind center line or longer. Longer is more traction, more longevity traction. But the biggest thing is that you just want to make sure you're not falling past the center when it's going through its motions.
Blaine, who will win the Super Nationals for the modifieds and why? Well, I'm betting on one of 33 guys. I'll be able to tell you a little bit closer on that once I know what the lineup is, because I'm pretty confident whoever wins is going to probably be started in the first 3 rows. Uh, and not saying that the racetrack's not capable of it or whatever, but in today's world, starting position is such a key factor because these cars are I mean, if you make the show, you're capable of possibly winning that thing if you had the right draw and if you had the right starting position because it's just so competitive. Um, it's just like at the Harris Clash. I mean, both winners started outside front row, and so it was still a great race. There was all kinds of racing, and it'll be the same thing with the Super Nationals. There'll be a ton of racing throughout that whole 33 car field. It's just I couldn't give you I couldn't actually pick a guy, to be honest with you.
There's 200 guys that can win. I mean,
Well,
you
there's
bring
200 guys that can win, but I mean, like I said, come
such a
Super
big event.
Nationals Day, it'll be one of 33.
Yeah, it's crazy.
With the IMCA G60 tire, if after like 10 hot laps, we're gaining 5 pounds right rear pressure on a dry slick, starting at 11 and a half is this getting too hot? Sipe pressure issue. What would a 25 clapper do?
Clapper.
Clapper. That caught me for a minute, 25 clapper do that. Well, if you're gaining 5 pounds, that's not unrealistic. You could look into running nitrogen in the tire so you didn't gain as much. I would be pretty hesitant about starting that low on that right rear because it's going to, the first few laps are going to be, yeah, like I said, that tire is not designed to, I would recommend under 15 pounds in the right rear. Chassis setup, you just have to go through your setup. If the car is getting too hot on the right rear, that tells you that tire is the one that's doing the spinning, so you need to put some traction to it. Hobby stock, my right rear tire, American Racer tire, will gain air pressure during the feature and make the car loose at the end of the race. I start the tire at 12 pounds and will grow to 15 to 17. Do you have any ideas what to do to stop that amount of growth or chassis adjustment to adjust to that tire growth, or maybe running nitrogen instead of air? Nitrogen would definitely be my first choice because you'll take that, you start at 12 pounds, you might gain to 14. Nitrogen, and if you're running air with the humidity that we're having right now, that air is going to have a ton of moisture in it. And when moisture gets hot, it's going to make the tire grow. I'd highly recommend nitrogen is definitely a good thing to go for. Left rear shock being aggressive. It jumps up on the bars fast, good or bad? Well, on a 2-link car, what happens is with an aggressive left rear shock, we build some aggressive left rear shocks, but the only reason we build that aggressive left rear shock is the guys that struggle with trail braking. Because when they run into the corner and lift, they don't want the car to fall down on the left rear. So we're trying to come up with a shock to make up for a driving situation. Traction-wise, a softer left rear shock will probably keep traction in the car, in that left rear tire longer. It won't jump up as fast, but if you've got the right angle in your left rear bar, you're still going to have your bar giving you that feeling of hiking up. It just kind of depends. It's a driver preference. I mean, like there's some guys that have to have a fairly aggressive left rear for their driving situations, and I'm not saying that that's good or bad. We've got guys out there winning on both. But to answer your question, um, I'm not as big of a fan of anything jumping up on the bar real fast because that takes the chance of possibly blowing through the traction on that left rear. Hi, Pat. How you doing tonight? 18 more days. Geez, I was thinking it was closer than that. Huh. Thanks. 18 more days. We'll all be together for a week and have a great time and get to see a ton of people. Brian, built my new car for Boone with every single Weir's component I could bolt on it. Thank you, Chad and the crew, for the quality of work that you do.
Thank you, Brian. Appreciate it.
USMTS modified. Car pushers under the throttle, center the corner. What adjustment would you make? I would probably increase the stagger, increase my right upper bar angle. We need to put more traction to that right rear tire so that it's not overcompensating it. The other thing, with the USMTS deal, your aero balance is out of balance. So I would probably put a little bit more rebound in my right front shock, something to keep the right front tied down a little bit longer, right there in the middle of the corner. Well, we had great questions tonight. A lot of UMP questions. That's pretty interesting. That's a little different than normal. So, well, you got me interested now in all those new things that you're thinking about bringing to Boone. I mean, I can't wait to see what the new things are going to be. This is going to be exciting.
Yeah, it should be.
I'll be the first one at the Weir's table.
Right?
Yeah, duh.
New apparel's being too. We're gonna have our new swag there.
Awesome. Yep, we were thinking about that. I don't know. I'm not sure where the t-shirt committee is on all that t-shirt stuff. I haven't been as involved in that as what I maybe should be. So that'll be exciting. New apparel, cool. Well, Jim, if you're talking about the Super Nationals, it's like the second week it's the first full week in September. I think it's the 6th. Labor Day. It starts Labor Day, actually the Saturday before Labor Day, and goes through the Saturday after Labor Day. And it's in Boone Speedway in Boone, Iowa.
Labor Day, it's a holiday.
Yep.
Right? Wait, we got to work.
Yeah. I was thinking about that the other day. I think it's been like 30-some Super Nationals that I've actually spent Labor Day at the Super Nationals. Come to think about it, that's one holiday I've never actually had time off. Huh. Oh well, but I get to go enjoy it with all my friends, so that's a better holiday than normal.
This is my 10th, I think. You got a couple on me.
Yeah.
10th year going.
So anyway, never use nitrogen for tires. Do you need a vacuum out the air in order to keep the humidity out? That is actually the best way. It's an expense, but that's the best way to get the humidity out of there is using a vacuum pump. What do you recommend for air pressures on a sport mod on all four? Normally we run somewhere in that 10 to 12 pounds on the left front, normally around 10. No, actually it's 12 pounds and 15 on the right front. Left rear we run 10 and 15 on the right rear. Sounds like fun. I don't have to work. Well, I'll guarantee you. I say it over and over again. Until you've actually been to the event, you cannot comprehend the amount of racing. Even if a guy just goes for one day, the amount of racing that you can see in one day is just beyond comprehension. Anyway, open the left rear chain up an inch and moving the bars down to keep droop angle. Is there any advantages? Um, well, I don't know.
Spoiler?
Yeah, getting the spoiler up in the air might be an advantage. Um, Other than that, I really can't say I would be able to tell you what the big advantage of doing that. Getting more drop. The problem when you take, in my opinion, I'd rather actually run more angle in the bar so that it would be quicker on the start and less drop if I had to start with more angle, initial angle, because I think the car would be more responsive on a restart or on the start of the race. What effect is adding or subtracting toe out due to the race car? Um, well, with modifieds being an open wheel, especially like in a feature time, you can add a little bit more toe out to the front of the car and it will create a little bit more drag on the front end. It doesn't really lose speed so much, but it keeps the heat in the tires better. I feel the car's more predictable with a little bit more toe out in it. The tire that's going to have the load, the most amount of load on it is the right front anyway. So, the left front doesn't, in dynamic travel, doesn't have a tremendous amount of load. So there's just going to be a split second where you go down in the corner and you lift and both tires are loaded, where it's going to keep the car more stable in corner entry. With lead placement, I've always felt like having weight on the right rear of the car in a stock car always made me feel looser in the corner. I would get tight in the center. Why would that be? Well, with lead placement being higher, the the center of gravity is high already with the stock car. So it could definitely get that point where it rolls on the right rear and probably feels a little bit free. But your problem is once it rolls to the right rear and sticks the right rear, that's going to be your tightness in the middle. So with the stock cars, we've seen having more balanced weight, lead more in the center of the car seems to work better. I know some guys put a small chunk above the right rear when the racetrack slows down, just to kind of get their car to roll on the right rear. But anything that has any speed to it, you'd be better off with everything a more balanced weight balance in the car. Just bought a used spring smasher. You'll have something to get used to center and it made with what?
Center to
Yes.
center. Yeah, assuming you didn't buy one of our machines, but we don't have anything that'll adapt to other machines to get the center to center. You can go to the internet and get a digital ruler if you want and figure out a way to bolt it on there, and that'll give you the center to center. I'm not sure what you got there, but that's the best recommendation I would have for you.
Well, Brandon, thank you. You just got your GRT by BHE back. Car's working way better. Thank you, Rocky, and the rest of the guys. Well, we appreciate that. I know there's definitely some things that they found wrong in that were in the setup that definitely better make it a lot better. So I'm glad that's working out. Right on. That's what I felt in the seat. Yep, you got it. Well, we've got time for just a handful of questions. I think we got 5 more minutes here. The thing that I can't stress enough, the fact, you racers that are coming to Boone Super Nationals, I can't stress enough that my biggest tip is preparation. When you get there, there's so much stuff that's so overwhelming because there's freaking cars everywhere. And it will hit you in an overwhelming fashion, and everything happens so fast because they have so many cars to move through that you've got to really be paying attention so that you don't miss something, of course. But preparation, if you're going to spend the time and money to come to Super Nationals, with the intent of having a good time, spend the time now and get ready so you can have a good time. Otherwise, if you're not ready when you get there, I can't guarantee you're going to race and have a good time and then have a good time to begin with. Because if you start behind the, behind the eight ball a little bit, it's like I said, it's an overwhelming experience. It's a wonderful experience. We've had guys that have, I mean, a lot of people have come every year, and I appreciate seeing everybody. But preparation, maintenance and preparation, now's the time to be getting your shocks sent in, to get them checked, to make sure all that stuff is working right. If you haven't put new springs in the car, now's the time to freshen your car up. So when you get there, you're ready to race. And if you're ready to race, you're going to finish well. And then you can party and have a good time and get the best out of both of it, because I mean, there's nothing better than being in the show by the time Wednesday night comes, and then you can watch everybody else have their good time. Hobby stock, when the car rolls on the right rear, it gets loose off the corner. I hear that weight on the right rear should tighten it up. Not happening. Here's what not happening. I'm sorry. Not happening here. What go-to adjustment would you suggest? Well, with a hobby stock, that narrow tire is going to have a certain amount of side bite. What happens is when you put weight on the right rear, it's going to roll over on the right rear and stick that right rear real hard. But there's nothing with the rules and the limits that you have for traction. There's nothing to get that traction back. So it goes back to that same thing, Alec. Stock car or hobby stock, you're a lot better off having a balanced setup, having the weight distributed in the car equally, so that you can use your tire and do what you need to do with the tire, because the tire itself, with it being that stock tread pattern, is going to have plenty of side bite. How are the GRT front suspension compared to the years past? Well, actually, the front ends are quite a bit different now than what the cars used to be in the past. The GRT made quite a few changes. I think it was actually in 2020, and then they've made a few tweaks to it since then. And we do things a little bit different, and it's just because of how I like to set the cars up a little bit better. We actually use an A-frame, where their A-frame, upper A-frames have two holes. We actually have a slotted one so that we can adjust the anti-dive in the car if we want to. But that's the only thing really different. They're new front ends, and like I said, Jake McBurney's car is going real good. Jeremy Hill's car is going real good. We've had good luck with the cars. I'm very, very pleased with how everything has been going. Are your cars stubbed straight or turned? Do you see an advantage on a slick racetrack with a straight stub? Well, it kind of all depends on how you go about it. In answer to your first question, our stubs are turned. I like that for the fact that I think the car can enter the corner a little bit better. Everybody's got their own thing. I know a lot of guys build their cars with the cars straight up and have very good success. So it's just a personal preference. It's, one of those things where we did it and it's worked well in the past. And so now we just kind of learn how to tweak around it. I like the way the car enters the corner with the turn stub. That's just my preference. Okay, well, hi, Todd. How's things going out there? Everything in Michigan's going good, I hope. We're out of time. So appreciate you guys. Great group of questions again tonight. And our next live will be August 30th. And then we'll be actually doing a live segment at the Super Nationals like we have done in the past. That way, those of you who can't make it to the Super Nationals will get to see some of Chad's new products that he's waiting until the Super Nationals to debut. And just having fun. Appreciate you guys. Great night. Thanks for all chiming in, and we'll see you August 30th. Thank you.